What if you didn't actually fail, but simply outgrew the character you have been playing? Who is to perform when there is no one left? Who is left when nobody is left for there? If you were a garden that has been paved over the years to build a stage for your persona, what is the very first thing you would plant in the soil now that the concrete has finally cracked? When the polished persona finally collapses in the dead of night, you don't fall into a void, you fall into the fertile earth. When the clock hits 3 a.m. and the persona, that curated, functional version of yourself you present to the world, finally collapses under the weight of exhaustion, you aren't actually left with nothing. You are left with the fertile soil of your existence. The vacuum you feel isn't empty void. It is the clearing of old brush to make it fertile. The house was silent, but the air inside Elias' room felt heavy, like it was held together by static. At 3:14 a.m., the Elias, who managed a team, paid a mortgage, and laughed at the right time in conversation, finally broke. It didn't happen with a scream, it happened with a glass sculpture losing its glue, a silent, glittering collapse into the carpet. He sat on the floor, leaning against the bedframe. For years he had lived inside the persona, a polished, high-rise apartment of a man. Now, looking inward, he saw only a vacuum. The rooms of his identity were empty. No furniture, no art, no purpose. Just a cold, whistling wind where a personality used to be. I am empty, he whispered to the shadows. But as he sat in that vacuum, he noticed something strange. The vacuum didn't hurt, it was just spacious. He looked down at his hands without the Elias, who was a success or a failure. His hands were just skin and bone, marvelous machines moving in the moonlight. He felt the rise and fall of his chest. He wasn't doing the breathing was doing him. In the corner of his mind's eye, where the vacuum felt deepest, he imagined a single microscopic speck of moss. It was a vibrant neon green, clashing with the grey void of his exhaustion. He didn't try to build a new room or a new ego. He just watched the moss. He gave it the only thing he had left, his attention. In the silence of the sleepless night, the moss began to spread. It didn't need a blueprint. It didn't need a persona to tell it how to grow. It crept over the edges of the vacuum, turning the cold emptiness into a soft, damp carpet of living velvet. He realized then that the vacuum wasn't the hole he was falling into, it was the clearance required for his new growth. The persona was a concrete parking lot, stable but dead. The collapse had cracked the concrete, and the green wealth was finally pushing through the fissures. By 4:30 a.m., Elias didn't feel like a manager or a provider or even a man. He felt like forest. He felt the deep, silent wealth of simply existing. His value wasn't in the structure of the house or the title on his business card. His wealth was the sap, like resilience, flowing through his veins, the quiet power of a plant that grows in the dark, and the strange, cool peace of having nothing left to lose. When the sun finally began to grey the edges of the curtains, he didn't try to glue the glass sculpture back together. He stood up, stiff jointed but rooted. The vacuum was gone, replaced by a lush interior wildness. The world would ask for the persona back by 9:00 a.m. He would give them a version of it, but he would keep the forest for himself. He was no longer a hollow vessel. He was the gardener of his own green soul. When the clock hits 3:00 a.m. and the persona, that curated functional version of yourself you present to the world, finally collapses under the weight of exhaustion, you aren't actually left with nothing. You are left with the fertile soil of your own existence. The vacuum you feel isn't an empty void. It is the clearing of old brush to make way for green wealth. We often mistake the collapse of our social identity for a personal ending. In nature, nothing grows year round. The persona was a seasonal garment. It wore out because it was static while you were organic. The vacuum you feel is actually fallow ground, just as a field must lie empty to regain its nutrients. Your psyche is clearing away the performance of being okay to make room for the reality of being alive. The vacuum feels like it is sucking the life out of you because you are looking at it as a whole. In physics, a vacuum is a state of lowest energy that is still teeming with fluctuations. You aren't facing a nothing, you are facing a clearing. Green wealth begins with the realization that when you stop doing, you finally start being. The vacuum is the space required for your internal ecosystem to breathe without the smog of external expectations. Green wealth is the currency of resilience, intuition, and self-compassion. Unlike the gold of the persona, which relies on outside validation, green wealth grows from the inside out. Every breath you take in this sleepless silence is a deposit into your true reserves. The roots, your history and survival; the leaves, your current sensations; the cool air, the weight of the blanket; the sap, your underlying consciousness that remains even when the character you play has fainted. To transition from the vacuum to the green, observe the empty space with a gardener eye rather than a critic lens. The old persona is the vacuum, the new persona is the green wealth, the growth. The old persona is the built on shoots, the new persona is built on I am. The old persona is rigid and brittle, the new persona is flexible and organic. The old persona requires constant external light. The new persona is photosynthesizes even from the shadows. The old persona existing to maintain, the new persona replenishing to inhabit. Close your eyes and stop trying to rebuild the person who collapsed. The person was tired, let them sleep. Instead, Imagine a small, stubborn vine of a mild life starting at the base of your spine. With every heartbeat, it claims a bit more of that vacuum. It does not need you to be successful, charming, or productive. It only needs you to be present. The vacuum is not a hungry ghost. It is the cool, dark earth, and you, in all your sleepless vulnerability, are the seed. Green wealth is the inevitable result of staying planted.